A beach in Thailand, 7:47 in the morning. The sand is warm. The water is still. Families are setting up for the day. Towels on sun loungers, children running toward the shore, cameras being unpacked to capture the kind of holiday memory that gets printed and framed back home. It is December 26, 2004, the day after Christmas. For thousands of European tourists, this is the middle of the best holiday of their lives. For local Thai, Indonesian, Sri Lankan and Indian families, it is an ordinary Sunday morning on the Indian Ocean coast. In 20 minutes, most of the people on this beach will be dead. Before the day is over, the wave that is about to be born beneath the ocean will travel thousands of kilometers in every direction. It will strike 14 countries across 2 continents. It will kill 227,000 people. Some of them will die where you are standing now. Others will die on beaches they have never heard of, in countries they could not find on a map, thousands of kilometers from the event that kills them. None of them know what is coming. There is no warning. There is no alarm. There is not even a system in place that could tell them. This is the story of the morning the Indian Ocean rose up and killed 250,000 people, and why nobody told them it was coming. At 58 minutes past midnight Greenwich Mean Time, beneath the Indian Ocean off the western coast of Sumatra, something begins that has been building for over a century. The Indian tectonic plate has been sliding beneath the Burma plate at a rate of about 6 centimeters a year. At some points along their shared fault, they have locked together. Stress has been accumulating for decades. At this precise moment, along a fault line more than 1,200 kilometers long, that stress is released all at once. The seafloor ruptures. A strip of ocean crust longer than the distance from London to Warsaw lifts upward by as much as 10 meters in places. The total volume of water displaced by this single geological event is measured not in cubic meters, but in cubic kilometers. A wave is born. The earthquake measures 9.1 on the moment magnitude scale. That number requires context. The Richter scale most people are familiar with is logarithmic. Each whole number represents a 10-fold increase in amplitude and roughly 32 times more energy released. A 6.0 earthquake is significant. A 7.0 is serious. An 8.0 is catastrophic. A 9.0 is almost beyond comparison. The 2004 earthquake released energy equivalent to over 23,000 Hiroshima-sized atomic bombs. It was so powerful it caused the entire planet to vibrate noticeably for weeks. It shortened the length of the day by a fraction of a second. It shifted the Earth's axis of rotation by several centimeters. It is the 3rd largest earthquake ever recorded in human history. The rupture itself lasts nearly 10 minutes, an extraordinary duration. Most earthquakes last seconds. This one tore the seafloor apart for the time it takes to walk a kilometer. On the surface of the ocean, there is nothing to see. Just a faint, confusing ripple, the first sign of something much larger moving underneath. 4,000 kilometers away, in Ewa Beach, Hawaii, 2 men are on the night shift at the Pacific Tsunami Warning Center. Stu Weinstein and Barry Hershorn are geophysicists. Their job is to monitor seismic activity across the Pacific Ocean and issue tsunami warnings when an earthquake occurs that could threaten coastlines in their region. At 15 minutes past 1 in the morning local time, their instruments light up. Within minutes they know what they are looking at: a massive undersea earthquake. almost certainly capable of generating a tsunami. They also know immediately that it has not occurred in the Pacific. It has occurred in the Indian Ocean, a region for which they have no mandate, no warning network, and almost no contacts. They do what they can. They issue a bulletin. But the bulletin goes to the agencies subscribed to the Pacific system. None of the Indian Ocean nations are on that list. The coastlines that are about to be destroyed will not receive the warning. In deep water, a tsunami is almost invisible. The wave that has just been generated is racing outward from the rupture zone at speeds of up to 800 kilometers an hour, the cruising speed of a commercial jet aircraft. But out in the open ocean, where the water is thousands of meters deep, the wave is only a meter high and stretched over hundreds of kilometers of wavelength. A ship sailing over it would feel nothing. A swimmer would notice nothing. A satellite photographing it from space would see nothing. It is only when the wave reaches shallow water near a coastline that the physics changes completely. The front of the wave snows as it encounters the rising seabed. The water behind piles up into the back of it. What was a meter high at sea becomes 10 meters, 15 meters, 30 meters high as it approaches shore. This is what is now racing toward coastlines across the Indian Ocean. It reaches Sumatra first. Banda Aceh is a city of 250,000 people at the northern tip of Sumatra. It sits directly in the path of the tsunami, only 150 kilometers from the earthquake's epicenter. 15 minutes after the rupture, the ocean begins to behave strangely in Banda Aceh. The water draws back from the shore, much further than the usual tide. Fishing boats are left stranded on dry sand. Fish flop helplessly in puddles where the sea should be. Some people walk out onto the newly exposed seabed. Children run to collect stranded fish. It is strange. It is novel. It is briefly fascinating. Almost nobody who walks out onto that seabed will return. The wave arrives not as a single breaker, but as a rising wall, a dark line on the horizon that grows higher and wider as it approaches. In Banda Aceh, it reaches heights of over 30 meters. A 10-story building of water moving at the speed of a highway car. It flattens the coastline. It pushes inland for kilometers, carrying boats, cars, buildings, trees, and people with it. Entire villages are ground to rubble in seconds. In some coastal districts of Banda Aceh, mortality exceeds 90%. Over 160,000 people will die in Indonesia, more than in any other country hit by the wave. On the beaches of Phuket and Khao Lak in Thailand, something similar begins to happen. But here, the wave has taken nearly 2 hours to travel across the Andaman Sea. It is closer to 8 in the morning local time when the water first pulls back. Many of the tourists on these beaches are European, Swedes, Germans, Britons, Finns. They are on Christmas holidays with their families. They have video cameras. They are filming the beach, the sea, their children. When the water retreats, they film that too. Nobody understands what it means. One tourist is heard on his own footage saying to his wife, "Look at this, the sea is going away." A handful of people do understand. A 10-year-old British girl named Tilly Smith, on holiday with her family, recognizes the signs from a geography lesson she had at school 2 weeks earlier. She tells her parents. Her parents tell the hotel staff. The beach they are on is evacuated. Everyone survives. Most beaches are not evacuated. And then the water comes back. The wave that hits Thailand is smaller than the one that destroyed Banda Aceh, around 10 meters at its peak in most places. But it is hitting beaches crowded with tourists who have no frame of reference for what they are seeing. The footage that exists from this morning in Thailand has become some of the most watched disaster video in human history. It shows the wave arriving, first as a distant blur, then as a rising line of white water, then as a wall of debris-laden ocean that swallows the beachfront hotels, the roads behind them, the villages behind those. The force of the water picks up cars and throws them through buildings. It strips palm trees of their bark. It carries human beings hundreds of meters inland in a churning mass of mud, wood, metal, glass, and salt water. Those who survive the first wave often do so because they happen to be high enough to be out of reach. A hotel balcony, a tall palm tree, the upper floor of a concrete building. But there is rarely just one wave. A tsunami is a series of waves, sometimes many. The second and third waves are often larger than the first. Many who survive the initial impact are taken by what follows. In Thailand, over 5,000 people will die. Nearly half of them are foreign tourists. Sri Lanka is nearly 2,000 kilometers from the earthquake's epicenter. The wave takes almost 2 hours to arrive. Nobody there has any warning. At around 9:20 in the morning local time, the Queen of the Sea, a crowded passenger train carrying approximately 1,500 people along the southern coast, stops at Perelia Station. It is a regular service, packed with families traveling for the Boxing Day holiday. As the train stops, the first wave hits. Passengers, frightened by the rising water, climb onto the roof. Local villagers, also terrified, climb onto the train for safety. Hundreds of people cling to the stationary carriages. Then the main wave arrives. The train, a steel structure weighing hundreds of tons, is lifted off its rails and thrown into the surrounding palm trees. The carriages are crumpled and submerged. Almost everyone aboard is killed. The death toll at Perelia exceeds 1,700 people. It is the single deadliest rail disaster in human history. Across Sri Lanka, over 35,000 people die that morning. The wave reaches the coast of India at approximately the same time it hits Sri Lanka. The southern states of Tamil Nadu, Kerala, Andhra Pradesh, and the Union Territory of Pondicherry are devastated. In India, over 16,000 people die. Many of them are fishing families whose entire communities are built along the water's edge. Their boats, their homes, their livelihoods, all concentrated on the very strip of land that the wave destroys most completely. Further south, the Maldives, an island nation of coral atolls, most of which rise less than 2 meters above sea level, is completely overwhelmed. Many of the islands are entirely submerged as the wave passes over them. Remarkably, because the atolls are so small and the water passes through them rather than building up against a coastline, the Maldivian death toll is comparatively low, around 100 people. But the damage is catastrophic. A third of the entire country is displaced, and the wave has not stopped. It is still moving. Most people, when they think of the 2004 tsunami, think of Thailand and Indonesia. Some remember Sri Lanka. Very few remember that the wave crossed the entire Indian Ocean. 7 hours after the earthquake, the tsunami reaches the east coast of Africa. It strikes Somalia, Kenya, Tanzania, the Seychelles, Madagascar, and even reaches as far as South Africa. In Somalia, where fishing villages sit on the shore with no seawalls, no warnings, and no infrastructure to respond, nearly 300 people die. In Tanzania, 10 die. In Kenya, 1 death is confirmed. These numbers are small compared to Indonesia or Sri Lanka, but they illustrate the extraordinary reach of what has happened. A single event in the ocean between Indonesia and Sri Lanka has, in the space of one morning, killed people on the east coast of Africa. By the time the last of the ripples dies away, the tsunami has affected 14 countries on 2 continents. The energy released at 8 o'clock that morning local time has, within hours, caused the largest natural disaster of the 21st century. In the hours after the wave, the scale of what has happened is impossible for anyone to grasp. There is no central source of information. Each affected country is dealing with its own catastrophe. Communications infrastructure along thousands of kilometers of coastline has been destroyed. Roads are impossible. Airports and ports are damaged or submerged. Survivors wander through shattered landscapes looking for family members. In some villages, the ground is covered with a thick layer of mud, wood, bodies, and personal possessions. A single unrecognizable mass where a community used to be. International news organizations begin to understand, piece by piece, that something of historic scale has occurred. The first reports speak of hundreds dead, then thousands, then tens of thousands. The number keeps climbing throughout the day, through the evening, into the next morning. By December 27th, the world understands. 250,000 people are dead or missing across more than a dozen countries. It is the deadliest natural disaster of the century. One of the factors that made the 2004 tsunami unique in the history of natural disasters is the sheer volume of footage that exists of it. Tourist beaches in Thailand and Sri Lanka were crowded with Europeans who had brought handheld video cameras to document their Christmas holidays. When the waves came, many of them continued filming, instinctively, disbelievingly, sometimes fatally. In the weeks that followed, this footage spread around the world. Television networks broadcasted constantly. It was the first major natural disaster to be recorded from the ground level, in real time, by ordinary people who happened to be present at the moment of impact. The effect on public understanding was unprecedented. For the first time in history, audiences in Europe and North America could see exactly what a tsunami looked like as it arrived. The global humanitarian response that followed was the largest in history for any single natural disaster. Governments pledged more than $14 billion in aid within weeks. Private citizens donated additional billions through charities and relief organizations. Military forces from dozens of countries were deployed to affected regions, delivering supplies, rebuilding infrastructure, evacuating survivors. Identifying the dead would become one of the largest forensic operations ever undertaken. DNA identification teams worked in Thailand for years to identify the remains of foreign tourists. Some victims were never identified. Some families never received confirmation of what had happened to their relatives. The total economic damage across the affected region exceeded $15 billion. Entire industries, tourism, fishing, agriculture, were destroyed along the affected coastlines and took years to rebuild. But the most pressing question in the weeks and months after the disaster was not economic. It was a question that had been quietly present from the moment the earthquake occurred at 0:58 that morning. Why was there no warning? A tsunami warning system had existed in the Pacific Ocean since the 1960s. It had been built in response to several deadly Pacific tsunamis, particularly the 1946 Aleutian earthquake tsunami, which killed 159 people in Hawaii, and the 1960 Chilean tsunami, which killed people on coastlines as distant as Japan. The Pacific Tsunami Warning Center, based in Hawaii, was the hub of this system. A network of seismic monitoring stations, deep ocean buoys, tide gauges, and communications links allowed the center to detect undersea earthquakes, estimate tsunami potential, and issue warnings to subscribed agencies around the Pacific Rim within minutes. It was not a perfect system, but it existed. It had saved lives. No equivalent system existed for the Indian Ocean. The reasons for this gap were complex, but they came down to a combination of history, economics, and assumption. Deadly tsunamis in the Indian Ocean basin were not unknown. In 1883, the eruption of Krakatoa in Indonesia generated tsunamis that killed over 36,000 people. But in the institutional memory of the nations surrounding the Indian Ocean, tsunamis were rare events, not something that required a permanent, expensive, constantly maintained monitoring system. The countries that would have borne the cost, Indonesia, Thailand, Sri Lanka, India, Bangladesh, the Maldives, and the East African nations, faced more pressing everyday threats: poverty, disease, political instability, other natural hazards. A tsunami warning system was not at the top of any budget priority list. The international community had discussed the need for a global warning system for decades. Nothing had been built. When the earthquake occurred on December 26, 2004, Stu Weinstein and Barry Hirschhorn in Hawaii knew a catastrophe was unfolding across the Indian Ocean. They had no one to call. They did try. They called the State Department. They called the American Embassy in Jakarta. They tried to reach Australian seismological agencies. They contacted colleagues in the international scientific community. Everywhere they turned, they ran into the same problem. There was no established protocol for warning Indian Ocean nations. There were no dedicated phone lines. There were no pre-arranged contacts in coastal emergency management offices. The people who needed to know, the people on coastlines hundreds and thousands of kilometers from Sumatra, who still had hours before the wave arrived, were unreachable. By the time warnings did begin to circulate through diplomatic channels, the wave had already hit the coastlines closest to the epicenter. By the time some form of notification reached Sri Lankan and Indian authorities, the wave was minutes from their shores. In Thailand, an official at the meteorological department actually debated internally whether to issue a warning and decided against it for fear of disrupting the tourism industry during peak season if the threat turned out to be a false alarm. People died who did not have to die. Not everywhere. The coastlines nearest the epicenter had no time to be saved. But in Thailand, Sri Lanka, India, the Maldives, and East Africa, there were minutes or hours when a warning could have reached the shore. It did not. The response to this failure was, for once, rapid and serious. Within months of the disaster, the United Nations coordinated an international effort to build an Indian Ocean tsunami warning and mitigation system. The cost, previously considered prohibitive, was suddenly mobilized by the countries that had just watched 250,000 of their citizens die. A network of deep ocean buoys, seismic stations, tide gauges, and communications infrastructure was deployed across the Indian Ocean basin. National tsunami warning centers were established in India, Indonesia, and Australia, acting as regional hubs for the surrounding nations. Emergency communication protocols were established between coastal authorities, national governments, and international monitoring agencies. By 2011, the Indian Ocean had a warning system comparable to the Pacific. It has been tested. Since 2004, multiple earthquakes have generated smaller tsunamis in the region. Warnings have been issued. Coastal populations have been evacuated. Lives have been saved. The system that should have existed on December 26, 2004, now exists. Its construction was paid for in the single greatest currency it is possible to spend on preparedness. The 2004 tsunami changed more than infrastructure. It permanently changed how the world understands tsunamis. Before 2004, the word tsunami was unfamiliar to most people outside the Pacific Rim. After 2004, it entered global vocabulary. Beach signage explaining tsunami evacuation routes is now standard in coastal tourist regions worldwide. School curricula in earthquake-prone countries now include tsunami awareness as a matter of course. Public understanding of the natural warning signs, the retreating sea, the unusual ocean behavior has become widespread. Tilly Smith's geography lesson, which saved her beach, is now a model that has been replicated in educational programs around the world. The simple act of teaching children what a retreating ocean means has become a form of civil defense. What happened on the morning of December 26, 2004, did not need to kill as many people as it did. Not the ones closest to the epicenter. They were beyond the reach of any possible warning system. But the thousands of people on coastlines hours away, who had the time to move to higher ground, if only they had known, they died because nobody told them. That failure has been permanently addressed, at the cost of over 200,000 lives. 227,000 people died on December 26, 2004. That number is too large for any individual mind to process. It is a statistic so vast it becomes abstract, a number that is bigger than most cities, larger than the population of many countries. So it is important, perhaps most important, to remember that it was not a number. It was a grandfather in Banda Aceh teaching his grandson to fish at the water's edge. It was a Swedish family posing for a photograph on a beach in Khao Lak. It was a Sri Lankan mother taking her children to visit their relatives on the morning train. It was a honeymooning couple in the Maldives. It was a Somali fisherman checking his nets. It was 227,000 individual lives, each one complete, each one full of other people who loved them, each one extinguished in a single morning by an event none of them had seen coming and none of them could have prepared for. Every coastline on Earth is bordered by an ocean that is capable of the same thing. The Indian Ocean on December 26, 2004 was not angry. It did not take revenge. It did not choose its victims. An earthquake released energy into water. Water obeyed physics. People who happened to be in the path of that water died because they were in its path. The lesson of 2004 is not that the sea is dangerous, though it is. It is that the sea is indifferent. It will rise when physics commands it to rise. It will recede before it returns. It will give warnings to those who know how to read them. Whether those warnings reach the people who need them is entirely up to human beings, to their systems, their governments, their schools, their preparedness. On the morning of December 26, 2004, those systems did not exist for the Indian Ocean. 250,000 people paid the price of that absence. Today, those systems exist. They will not prevent the next great wave. Nothing can. But they will give people time, minutes, sometimes hours, to move to higher ground. That time is what Tilly Smith gave her beach. That time is what Stu Weinstein and Barry Hershorn in Hawaii could not deliver to the coastlines they knew were in danger. The monument to the 2004 tsunami is not a statue. It is a network of buoys in the Indian Ocean, sending data every few minutes to warning centers that now exist in every coastal nation in the region. Invisible, constant, vigilant. 227,000 people did not choose to be part of this story. They are part of it forever now.